Well, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. My name is Julie Pettit, and I am here with the one and only Lisa Blue doing our Living Legends interview. So Lisa, I'll tell you, I actually had to pinch myself the first time you and I were on a case together, and I got to sit next to you at counsel table and argue a hearing. And today is a similar experience for me and feeling like I have to pinch myself in doing your Living Legends interview. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
And I know that after today, we'll all walk away with some bit of very useful information because you can't just be around Lisa without walking away with something helpful.
Thank you.
So there's a million things that we could say to introduce Lisa. I'll start just by saying that she's tried over 100 criminal cases, first chair, over 100 civil cases, first chair. She literally wrote the book on voir dire. But more importantly about Lisa, since I've gotten to know you, the way that I would best describe you is someone that's kind. And everything I've seen and in my time around you, I've just noticed how kind you are. And the second thing I notice about you is what good advice you give. So I know we're all in for a treat today being around you, but if it's okay, Lisa, I'd like for you to tell us, who are you and what do you want people to know about you?
If somebody asks me who I am, I never think about my success or what I've achieved. I think about the tragedies that I've endured and what I've overcome, because I think that says so much more about who you are. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and my most important memory of my family, because I grew up in a really integrated South. And my father was the first medical doctor. He was a general surgeon to integrate his practice. And when he started having African Americans as patients, all of the white patients left. And the African Americans couldn't pay. And so we went from middle class to really lower middle class. And I remember watching my dad worry about money a lot. But that really left an impression. That I think that shaped who I am as far as caring about minorities and people who are not as fortunate as I am.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. You know, over the years since I've known you, you have given me some of the best advice, and I'll forever be grateful for the professional and personal advice that you've given me over the years. So before we really jump into the interview, I want to ask you this. If there's only one thing that everyone hears from you today, a life tip, can you give us one life tip that if someone hears it and implements it, it will change their life for the better?
I think the definition of having a great life is how you react to failure, to defeat, to embarrassment, to just hardships. Because the people that overcome that, that's strength, that's resilience. And to me, if you are a person that and you're resilient, you're going to have a happy life. It's the people that they get so bogged down and they're so sensitive. Like a lot of the new generation, I find that they're very sensitive to criticism and failure and challenges.
You know, you're so approachable and you're so easy to talk to, Lisa. And I know in part that's because you're a trained psychologist. How has your psychology training helped you to become a better trial lawyer?
I think the best career advice I ever received was from another psychologist when I was young, and I wanted to know, all right, I'm starting my career as a young psychologist because I have 2 masters in testing. And I always thought that I was going to be somebody sitting in an office doing MMPIs, Rorschach test, IQ test. And that psychologist said, Lisa, always get a specialty, and then you'll be needed. But if you're just a generalist, which is not a bad thing, but it's just harder to really make a difference and cement yourself in the community. So that was a good piece of advice.
That's good advice. So you obviously were a very successful trial lawyer. And then you did something wild and crazy. You married another very successful trial lawyer. So will you tell us about Fred and what it was like being married to Fred?
It was just a great relationship. We had a wonderful partnership. He was my best friend. He was the settlement guy. He did not like to go to trial. I saw him in 2 jury trials. I did not think he did a good job. But it was such a great marriage because we both traveled during the week, but we met on Fridays and Saturdays, and we always had date night. That was always for 28 years. Wow. We had a date night. And then our agreement was that every December we'd go away for 3 weeks. So it was a great match, because we love to talk about the same thing. He really taught me about politics. And now because of that, I love politics. He was very involved in politics.
Where was your most memorable 3-week trip with Fred?
Mm-hmm. Well, we always went to the same place for 2 weeks. We went to England for New Year's Eve, and we went to France for Christmas. And then we picked another place to go for the 3rd week.
Wow, that's very fun. Well, tell us about your family life. I have a 1-year-old, and that's hard. But you decided for the first time at the age of 57 to have children. So tell us about that. Why did you decide, and how did you do it?
Well, I was never going to have kids. I did not want kids. And the reason I didn't want kids is because I had the perfect life. I had my best friend, my law partner, it was my travel partner, my confidant. And then Fred was diagnosed in, died in 2008, and he was diagnosed in 2002. And right at the end, I realized that when he was gone, I was going to be alone. So I was in the middle of a Vioxx trial with Mark Lanier in Angleton, Texas, and I started looking at eggdonor.com, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna have kids. So at 57, it was his sperm, so they're my children, they're not adopted, but they all have the same egg donor mother that I picked. Wow. And
and then he passed how much?
2008. So I had a 2-year-old, and then I had twins that were 6 months old. Okay. And I had no idea what it meant to be a single mother.
So you really were a single mother?
Yes, for my whole life, basically.
And what secrets or tips do you have on being a single mother?
Take my mindfulness class.
Take your mindfulness class. Okay, we'll get there.
It's just, you have to do this day by day. If you think about big picture and what's going to happen tomorrow, what school, and they should go to the best schools, and you will get overwhelmed, and your life will be so much harder.
When we look at you, or when I look at you, it seems like you've got it made. You have the perfect life. Everything looks like it was so easy somehow for you, but I know that was not the case. Tell us how you have suffered over the years.
Well, I lost my husband, and when you watch somebody die of cancer for 6 years and go to the doctor all the time, and it's blood test, and he had 2 bone marrow he had 2 bone marrow transplants, sorry. And then I fell in love again with an actor, Larry Hagman, who I met when somebody was doing a magazine article, and fell deeply in love again, was with him a couple of years. Sadly, he was older, and he had had a liver transplant. And so he lived to 81, and I was with both of them when they died. And so I got really depressed. And when Fred died, I went on antidepressant meds, and I didn't want to do that again. So I called my brother, who's my best friend, and he's a psychologist in Atlanta, and he said, hey, why don't you go out to California, meet with this psychologist who was this mindfulness guru. So I did, and that's when I found this mindfulness meditation that I'm really into. And then raising 3 daughters alone, my twins got caught in a perfect storm in COVID, and they both had pretty severe mental health issues. They're doing better now. The oldest one is fine, but having to deal with that on a day-to-day basis. I mean, they got caught for 2 years just looking at screens, and it just, it really affected them at that age.
What advice do you have for other lawyers that are trying to overcome obstacles and tragedies?
You just have to know it's going to get better. It will. It's like when you have something bad that happens with your kid, you know it's going to pass. But it's just, you got to just live every day because you've only got so much energy. And if you use it worrying, or especially worrying about things that you don't have any control over, your life is going to be a lot harder.
I want to talk a little bit about your professional life. I know what it's like to be a woman trial lawyer right now, but what was it like to be a woman trial lawyer 30 years ago?
It was great because there were so few of us. And there was one time there was a big asbestos hearing, and it was a federal judge, and there must have been 40 male defense plaintiffs lawyers doing asbestos. And that judge called every one of those male lawyers to the back in his chambers. And I sat out in the courtroom, and I was the only one, and there was never any explanation. So I never felt anything that was bad as far as being a young plaintiff's lawyer. It was kind of fun because it was kind of when the women really started to populate the profession. I felt so proud, and I just wanted them so bad to succeed.
So I know that obviously the jury selection expert. What have been your favorite cases over the years as far as jury selection goes?
Wow, as far as jury selection, probably when I was picking a jury, because I still love to pick juries in front of actual jury panels rather than just be a jury consultant. But I was representing somebody who was a Muslim, and I knew in Dallas County it was going to be a problem. And you can't stand up and say, do you have a prejudice against Muslims? Because nobody's going to answer. So I wanted to be creative, so I got on the internet, and I looked at bumper stickers. And I found 6 that were liberal, that showed like all the religions and no hate lives in this house, that kind of thing. And then I found 6 that were, this is my America, America's a Christian nation. And I put them up on the screen during jury selection. And I asked people, now, if you had to say which way you were leaning, which way would you lean? And I knew there was going to be one juror, or maybe more, that were going to be a smart aleck, and they were going to say, oh, neither one of those match me. And so my next slide was a blank bumper sticker, and I said, okay, make me a bumper sticker of your value system. So it was the way that I could, in a very subtle way, find out who I thought was going to be prejudiced.
Wow, that's good. How many juries do you pick in the average year now?
It depends. If I'm lucky, 3 to 5, because I love to still pick juries. It's a lot of work because it's all in the jury. Your case is over after the jury is seated.
Where is the location of the most unique jury that you've picked?
Probably North Carolina, and that was probably my favorite case. But it was federal court, so the judge did the voir dire, and it's tough when it's a federal voir dire jury selection, and you just really don't know what's going on in the jurors' hearts.
Right. You've given me some great advice over the years on what to wear for jury selection if you're a woman that's picking the jury. So can you share that advice with everyone?
Well, if you're a woman, wear red, because that's where the eye goes to. But as we were talking about how a woman should dress for a jury, it's really simple. Dress like you're going to church, and be sure everything that's on your body is nothing that anyone can criticize. No big jewelry, no long nails, no long eyelashes, no huge heels, no open toes. And with males, Look at the presidential debates. Look at their ties. They're all trying to tell you something. There's nobody up there with a weak tie. It's funny, during the Trump first debate, when Trump was debating the other Republicans, they all had on a red tie, except Trump. He had on a blue tie, but he won.
Yeah. One thing that I appreciate about you is, even after all of these years, you have so much energy and so much passion for the law and for what you're working on. So many lawyers that we're around don't have that anymore. They dread getting out of bed. They don't like going to their firm. They don't like who they work with. How, after all of these years, have you kept your passion and your energy for the law in the way that you have?
Really, it's two things. Do I like the kind of cases I'm working on? And the way I grew up, I'm liberal as far as the little guy and somebody who got hurt, doesn't have a voice. But my secret now is, at this age, and I'm 72 this year, with 16-year-old kids, is really to work with people that you love. And I was telling you earlier, I don't work with any lawyers anymore, unless at the end of my phone conversation, when I hang up, I say, hey, I love you, because I mean it. These are my friends. These are people that I really enjoy. And it's all about being with people that you care about. And I always tell young lawyers, one of the most important tips I can give you on how to pick your firm is pick your law firm more carefully than you would your spouse, because you will be spending more time with them.
Well, I know in trying cases, the wins are really fun and the losses are very hard. And I'll never forget, I had just come off of a loss of a big case, or a case that was big to me at the time, and it was probably about 10 years ago, and I didn't know what to do. I'd never lost something that I cared so much about, or a case that I was that passionate about. And I was confused, and I didn't know, how am I going to get back up after this loss? And I called you. I remember exactly where I was driving when I called you, and you gave me the best piece of advice ever. And you told me that the best way to recover from a loss was to throw myself into the next case that I had, just to throw myself right into it. So that was one wonderful piece of advice that you gave me on how to deal with a loss. What other suggestions or advice do you have for lawyers that are coming off of a big loss?
You know, everything in life is a brain hack. If you're getting a divorce, that's a big loss. If you've just lost a big case, and your brain is going to respond with sadness and disappointment and frustration, some anger. And the psychologists tell us, don't push away those feelings, accept them, and then let go of them by doing something that you enjoy, or throw yourself back into another case, or do something that is distracting that you can really focus on. It's all how you program your brain.
Right. There's a lot of lawyers that are around us that we both know that are tired of our profession. They think it's too adversarial. They dread, it's Monday. They dread getting up on Mondays and going to the office. What do you say to the lawyer right now that's dreading going to the office today?
Well, I treat them like a therapy patient. I'd want to start from the beginning. Let's talk about when you wake up, what do you think about? And you feel this feeling of dread, and let's talk about, is it who you're around? Is it the type of cases? Is it the type of work? So really drilling down to see what the issue is, and then figuring out how to change it. And it's always making these small changes. I would never tell the lawyer who's upset about their work, we'll just quit and go find something else. No, it's a process of small steps.
You mentioned starting with, what's happening in the morning. I know that you're a big believer on what you do in the morning dictates the rest of your day. So tell us, what is your morning routine, and why is your morning routine so important?
Well, it starts the night before. I try to go to sleep around 8, which I've always had sleep issues. Even as a child, I remember my parents yelling at me because I didn't want to go to sleep. So I try to go to sleep by 8. I wake up between 3:30 and 4. I do some breathing exercises. I meditate on my own, and then I have an app. And then my big thing is to get exercise over with. And gosh, I've been doing it so long. By the time I take my kids to school, I've already been up. I'm done with my exercise. I've done my Duolingo. I feel like I've just gotten a big piece of the day over with.
What's the name of the meditation app that you use?
I like Calm because I like Jay Shetty. I think he's interesting and fun.
So one piece of advice that you gave me when I was about to have the baby is to figure out how you're going to map out your schedule and make sure that you get all of the kid stuff done. So can you share with us your method of keeping track of your schedule, putting kid stuff first?
Well, you have to put kid stuff first, and then you work your schedule around it. And then you beg a judge, please, I need to take my kid to school, or I've got this program I need to go to. But I've found, especially raising kids alone, you just do the best you can, because at the end of your life, you're never going to say, I feel terrible, I missed that hearing. You're not going to say that.
Tell us about your calendar with the red X's that you keep for your kid stuff.
Well, I find out in advance, try to find out a month in advance. I put it on my calendar, and I really try not to move it. It's only everything in life is a priority, everything. And so the only other priority that is going to compete with my kids are jury trials, because you've got so many lawyers involved, and you just can't. Sometimes you just can't move things around. But especially for your kids to know that, hey, you are my first priority. I want to be and I want to take you, and I used to complain that I felt like a cab driver with my kids. And then some mother said to me, Lisa, that's the only time that they talk to you, because they can't run away, can't get out of the car. They're stuck.
Right.
And then I thought, yeah, that's the best time to have conversations.
So how do you get your daughters to open up with you when you're driving them around in your car?
Well, they don't. They look at their phone until I say, please put your phone down so I can talk to you. Mm-hmm. Phone's been I always say it's the devil. The phone and teenagers are just, but it's, say, hey, this is important to me. Learning to communicate with your kid, that should be a whole field of psychology. It's so hard. And even as a PhD psychologist, I make so many mistakes with my kids until their therapist says to me, Lisa, try this. Try being more empathetic and reflecting back. Oh, that sounds like you had a really bad day. I'm sorry. That kind of thing.
Right. Yeah. So one of the other difficult things I think about our profession is all of the big decisions we have to make. Where am I going to work for my first job? What type of cases do I want? Do I want to move firms? What advice do you have for us in making these types of big professional decisions?
I'm a mindfulness teacher. Today, and because we do our meditation, and then I always find a 2-minute tape. And the 2-minute tape today was exactly on that. And it was a little 2-minute segment from Alan Watts, a British philosopher. And he said, my best advice is to talk to these young kids. If money wasn't an object, what do you want to do? So it's just, it's called psychodrama. And I always, when I was a practicing psychologist, I would ask the patient to visualize and play the role. Okay, now you're with that lawyer, and now you're thinking about this kind of case. And really visually putting themselves in that situation so they can feel as if it was, in the moment, what it was going to be like.
Right. You told me recently that you have found the secret to happiness. What is it?
Well, there's a book, just came out, called The Happy Life. I'm a science girl. I'm not religious. I'm Jewish, but I'm not religious or spiritual. And so I base all of these findings on the literature. And with AI, now you can just make it so tight. there's a study that's been going on since 1930 out of Harvard. It's called the Harvard Study of Adult Development. It's been following over 1,000 people, really finding out the people that are unhappy and the people that are happy. And their conclusion after doing a meta study, looking all of these studies together, the people at the end of their life that are the happiest are the ones that have the best connections, the tightest connections to people that they love, their family and their friends. The people that I think it's so interesting that say that they're lonely, it is equivalent to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. They have now increased their risk of death by multiple folds because we now know that the emotion of loneliness actually increases your risk of dying.
Speaking of books, tell us about your most recent book.
Well, I had two that came out. One came out about 2 weeks ago, and because I'm a plaintiff's lawyer, it was another plaintiff's lawyer idea who came up with it, Chris Placitella, and he asked me to participate, and we interviewed these older, fantastic plaintiff's lawyers, just interviewed them and then put it in a book. So it's called Trials and Tribulations and it's published by AAJ, my trade organization. And the other book I published with my new law firm that I didn't create, but it was created during COVID, called 𝐓𝐡𝐨, which is 6 female lawyers, because this female lawyer in LA wanted to create an all-female trial firm. And the name of the book that I've been working on for 25 years is called Social and Emotional Intelligence for Judges. Because with my trial experience, I don't care anymore about rulings. I care about how judges behave. And when I realized there's nothing for the judges. After being a lawyer almost 50 years, when judges have mental health issues, not really. There's nothing really out there for them. And there's nothing to teach the young lawyers, how do you behave as a judge? Right. I mean, you've been in front of judges that yell and throw things, and they diminish these young lawyers. I mean, you've seen it.
Right.
And it's these judges, they're just not self-aware.
How has your book been received so far by judges?
Well, it's very new. I was going to say this in the beginning. I suffer from a lot of different issues. I'm dyslexic. My dyslexia is so bad that I cannot tell the difference between the word trial and trail. They look exactly the same. So I've had to deal with being dyslexic. I suffer from social anxiety. I get, not so much speaking because I love that. But if I have to walk in a room by myself and there's a big group of strangers, I get extreme anxiety. So you asked me how people received it, and it made me think that I want to start teaching small classes of judges. But because it's so new, I haven't done that yet. But it's just now getting out there. And I have a podcast. I kind of got lazy over the summer, but interviewing great trial lawyers. And the podcast is called What Makes a Great Trial Judge? Because why shouldn't a trial judge listen to it when they're riding to work?
Yeah, that's great. Well, we look forward to seeing what becomes of that. I know that anyone that looks at you thinks, wow, she's so successful. She's made it. Your big cases, huge verdicts, your books, your family, everything is looks so successful. But looking back, I know you've probably defined success a number of ways over the years. Where you're at now, how do you define success?
I don't ever think of myself as successful. I just think of myself as like everybody else. And it's really, when you say defining my success, I don't ever think of that word. I think of the word happiness. And the issue is, am I happy today? And if I'm happy, how did I get there? It's not how did I get to be successful. It's just every day practicing gratitude and just being so grateful for what I have.
Lisa, of all the things in your life other than your 3 beautiful daughters, what is most precious to you?
My time. And the older you get, the more precious it becomes. And it's so precious because everybody, including the internet, wants a piece of it. And they will do anything to distract you. And so my advice, especially as we talk about time, is remember the most important gift you can give somebody is your undivided time. And that's why in mindfulness, we have a whole class on how to listen mindfully. Because when doing marriage counseling in the past, one of the biggest complaints about their spouse was, my spouse doesn't listen to me. When I'm talking, they just see through me. And that was actually one of my kids' biggest complaints about me, the mom, to their therapist. They said, my mother doesn't listen to me. And so it's really setting an intent that you are paying attention in the moment and your mind is not wandering. That's mindfulness. That's brain training.
So if I want to tune out the internet and tune out Netflix, what advice do you have for me?
You really have to make it a habit. You have to have rules in your home. You have to start training your kids early. We don't never bring your devices to the table. When the kids are in the car and an adult's talking, you put your phone down. Rules for each other, the adults, that your phones go outside the room so you won't be tempted. The problem, especially we have so much sleep problems, you wake up and you look at your phone, and that is a terrible idea. Because then your brain starts. And so it's just having healthy habits with your devices so it won't steal your time.
Well, one of the wonderful things about you is how we've all seen you give back so much over the years. You have a long history of mentoring women trial lawyers. How did you get into that, and why is that so important to you?
It's because I had mentors when I was growing up. I think the most important thing about having a mentor is having more than one. People think, oh, I have one mentor. No. Have a mentor for your finance. Have a mentor for law. Have a mentor for crises. Have a mentor for all these different topics. I even have judge mentors because to me, it's so sad because I've been doing this so long. I don't know the right way to respond to judges. I don't know, would it be okay if I asked a judge a certain question? So I might call another judge and say, I'm thinking about doing this. Can you mentor me and tell me if I'm about to make a mistake?
So how do you select your mentors?
It's with the heart. I always tell people, this is true with jury verdicts. People decide cases based on what's in their heart first and their head second. Logic always follows emotion. That's the way it works.
Right. So you ran for state bar president and were not successful in that campaign. But if you had been successful in that campaign, what would you have done for the bar that's different than what maybe we've seen now?
Just making new ideas, being open to more creative things, having more diversity, trying to make people feel more included and giving people a voice. It's never me that's successful, it's picking the people around me so you have a successful team. And just figuring out what have been the complaints of the bar in the past and bringing those to the forefront and just trying to do a little bit of good.
So mindfulness is something that I know is important to you now in a way that you're giving back to the Bar Association. How did you get into mindfulness, and how did your Monday Mindfulness series come about?
It's because I've suffered from depression, and we know from science now that if you practice this mindfulness and meditation, it is equally as beneficial as being on antidepressants. And that's been repeatable. And I love that story because there's nothing wrong with being on anti-anxiety, Lexapro and Prozac. The problem, I think, as a psychologist is eventually you have to get off of them, I think. And that's really hard. And if you can figure out a way to be successful without big pharma, I think it's a good idea. So it's because I've had this severe depression, especially after I lost Larry. I knew it was either big pharma or it was something else. So that's how I got into it. And I actually went to California and met Dr. Jack Kornfield, who's very famous now. He was not that famous back then. And it really changed my life. I use it when I pick a jury. It's so normal to be nervous. But with this mindfulness meditation, I can change anxiety into really excitement. And when you have 3 kids and you get upset, especially with teenage girls, you have to have something, you have to have a skill, a tool in your toolbox to calm yourself down. Otherwise, you just get overwhelmed.
Tell us about what you offer on Mondays to anyone that wants to learn more about mindfulness.
Well, another thing I'd love for this group to know, this started the day COVID hit. Because as COVID went on, I saw my fellow plaintiffs' lawyers really suffer. People weren't working. They weren't turning cases. People couldn't get paid. Clients were not getting money. It was a disaster for the plaintiffs' bar. Maybe for the defense bar, too. I just don't know because I'm not a defense lawyer. And I decided I really wanted to do something for the plaintiffs' bar. So I went to my trade organization, AAJ, and I just started creating these programs on Zoom. They're free. They're every Monday. They're about 23 minutes. And there's a few, it's all pictures because Mark Lanier is one of my mentors. And so everything is visual because of my disability in learning. And, try it. And all you have to do is email me at lblue@Baron, BARON, one R, A-N-D, blue.com. I'll put you on the list. And if you miss it, because you can't be there Monday at 10 o'clock, you get the program with the invite for next week. So you have nothing to lose. And even people that don't join, they really like to get the little invite because it's all visual. And it's an invite on what we're going to be talking about.
What other projects are you working on right now that you're very passionate about?
Well, I'm at this stage, I don't want to do the heavy lifting. I don't want to be first chair in a lawsuit where you have to take the depots and you have to know what's in the rogs and all that preparation. It's so hard being a trial lawyer. It's so hard. And so now I'm really into the mindfulness meditation because I put maybe 20 hours a week developing each Monday program that's 20 minutes. I'm very into judges and judges' mental health because there's nothing out there. I have a little project in Dallas concerning how to bring the internship program more organization. Because as you know, you walk in the courthouse, one judge has 20 interns, another judge has none. And so it's figuring out a way that's just easier. Right. And the reason that's so important is these judges are mentoring. They're having an effect on these young lawyers. And I feel like some of these judges, I don't know, I'd like to learn what are the reasons you don't have more interns. And so I'm really excited about that project.
And what about your LA law practice?
The 𝐓𝐴 law firm, there's 6 of the smartest girls. Charles Aldis is one of my partners. And it's just fun. We work on cases that we all want to work on. So somebody will bring in a big case and somebody will raise their hand and say, oh, I want to do the jury work. Somebody will say, hey, I don't want to work on it, but I think I'll invest in it. And so you get the brains because everybody brings something different to the table. Charla's a great lawyer. Deborah Chang is amazing. Visuals, you got Randy McGinn, who's had incredible verdicts like Zoe Littlepage and then B.B. Feld. So these 6 women together have probably, they've had over 100 years because we're all, except for one, in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. Just me. I'm the oldest.
How did the 6 of you become friends?
Through the law, we're all plaintiffs lawyers, so we've known each other through trade organizations. But it was Deborah Chang during COVID said, hey, I want to create something, a law firm without an office that's all virtual. Everything is just by Zoom. Our law meetings, talking about cases, so we don't really see each other, or we don't have to until we're in trial.
Wow. That's very special. So I know one thing that's very important to you is always self-improvement. You're always making yourself better and focusing on something. Is there anything about you personally right now that you're working on?
I wanted to mention this because I think it's such a great tip for living. And that is, I always think about the first 3 sentences of my eulogy. And I think about what is it I want people to say about me, really. And that's every morning I think of that because I want to try to meet that standard. Because they're not going to talk about a verdict or some piece of success. And so I'm really trying to change my life to meet what that eulogy phrase is. And it's going to be, I want people to say I was kind, that's most important, that I was generous, and hopefully they'll say I was funny, because I think I'm funny. But I really want to change being more patient. My piece of advice, if you're not learning, then that's a bad thing. You always want to be improving yourself. And so every day I think about how can I improve a habit? I love languages. I've been taking French, Spanish, and Italian for over 20 years, all 3 of those languages. And I figured out how to learn them because of my dyslexia. I have to have somebody sit there with their face so I can read their lips. And so I want to change by making that better. And just, I'm in therapy a lot with my kids about how to learn to be a better parent. I think everybody in life should have a therapist. I always tell these young kids, when you're stuck, when in doubt, shout it out. You will come to an answer if you have a mirror to talk to, if you have somebody else. Because I see so many of my patients, I still have a private practice, when they talk it out, they come to their own solution. It's very powerful.
Tell us about your love life. Are you currently dating anyone?
No, it's just so hard after you've had the best, Fred and Larry. And at my age, you start thinking, would I rather be alone or would I rather be just with somebody just to have company? And it hasn't worked for me. I've gone out a few times, but Fred's been gone for 14 years. I think Larry's been gone for about 8. And so you get so set in your ways the older you get. Right. And I have such great friends, so.
Yeah. Let's talk about fears for a minute. Do you have any fears at this point in your life?
My biggest fear is that I failed my kids in some way. The only thing at the end of my life, and I'm not afraid of death at all. I think about death because I really want to live my life as if, and this is what the psychologist will tell you, live your life like you don't have very much time left. And that way you're going to use your time wisely. But I really just want my kids to turn out to be good humans. When there's school shootings or somebody tried to assassinate the former president, you think about, God, what were those parents like? What are they feeling? And how is it like to be that family? And so it ties back to success. I just want to say, hey, my kids to say, I really had a great mom. That to me is where I want to be.
I know you talked about your eulogy a few minutes ago, but what do you want to be most remembered by?
Being kind and approachable and not ever being mean to people. Yeah. I just feel in our society, maybe it's our presidency, maybe it's the way we've become so divided in America. I think it dribbles down to our juries. And I think it dribbles down to our society and how we treat each other. And having been on this planet for 71 years, I've never seen our country so divided. I've never seen people treat each other as mean as they do, because on the internet, you can hide. It's breathtaking how ugly people can be.
Well, as we bring this interview to a close, are there 3 things that you can leave with us that you want us to think about for our lives moving forward?
God, the 3 things. Practice gratitude, because I know as a psychologist, it will change your brain. I know beyond any shadow of a doubt, if you want to be happier, create your morning routine so you include gratitude and mindfulness. Mindfulness just means you've trained your brain to stay with exactly what's in front of you, rather than future thinking or thinking in the past. That's good mental health advice. The second thing is the life tip. If something's not going to matter in 5 years, let it go. And if you want to be happy, because I believe this, I think stress will kill you. Stress will cause cancer. Stress causes you to eat. Stress causes you to fight. Stress, there's nothing sexy about being stressed out. Nothing good about it. And so you have to create, as you get older, more tools on how am I going to deal with stress. You're not going to just wake up and have all these tools about how to handle difficulties in your life. You've got to focus on it. You've got to have therapy. There's so much on the internet to improve yourself. One thing, we were talking about books earlier. I figure out in my life, what do I want to work on? Like right now, I'm listening to tapes on just how to do the right thing, because I think it sets my North Star. And I love this author, Ryan Holiday, and his new book, Right Thing, Right Time. It's so meaningful on waking up every morning and looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, I'm going to do the right thing. Because even our little decisions, we make 35,000 decisions a day, according to psychologists, just doing the right thing. And the third thing was figuring out day by day what you need to be happy. Because nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's coming to save you. If you don't work on yourself and really become more self-aware and find out, how can I live every day becoming more happy, then, yeah, you're just going to be on default, and you don't want that.
Thank you. That's all really good advice. Do you have any other book recommendations that we need to make sure we get on before we sign off today?
Well, like I said, anything having to do with Ryan Holiday, I love. James Clear on habits. There are other books. There's a book called Grit. And what her theory is you can change your mindset. There are people that feel so frustrated that they just give up. And there's another mindset that they believe they can learn anything, and they're persistent and resilient. There's just so many. I have a book list. Anybody who's listening to this, you send me an email and I will send you a book list, and it is a great book list.
Wonderful.
It's a great book list.
Well, Lisa, thank you so much. You truly are a living legend, and we're so gracious and thankful for you sitting down with us today.
Thank you, Julie.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure knowing you.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.